and somebody's coming up and saying, would you like a drink? You're with other people, and they're having drinks, right? I think it is inevitable, and I think we fool ourselves if we want to believe that legalization is not going to change the environment in which the drug is used and not lead to greater usage. The question isn't, will it lead to greater usage? The question is that a bad thing? And I will not only cite to you the tax dollars we get from alcohol, but also the football games that are able to be run on free TV because we have a marketplace that recognizes as long as we can keep the harms of alcohol in relative control, and I'm not sure we do, right? And I do, again, respect Bill, and this is, again, where I think he's absolutely right to say we should be fearful of leading down a path where we get complete deregulation of a bunch of super harmful substances. But of course, this is the argument that's often made against the NRA for saying, why even have handguns legal? Because the next thing you're going to want AK-47s legal, and the next thing you're going to want is grenades legal, and the next thing you're going to want are nuclear bombs, for everybody to possess for their own self-defense. And we have the ability to say, yes, we see the slippery slope problem, but we have a ton of mechanisms to create stoppage points on those slopes. And I have an extraordinary amount of faith in our legal system and in the people Bill works with and hangs out with to say, you know what, we're far enough down this damn slope, let's start climbing back up when we get there. And again, what worries me most, and I don't know if Bill will agree with me or not, but I generally feel, and the debate over pot legalization kind of reinforces this, is if there's something that the Democrats and Republicans all agree on, it must be wrong. And so it's notable that in California, that all of the establishment politicians are all universally, all the former DEA agents, all the people who make a living from big government are saying, uh-oh, look at all the harms that are going to happen. And again, whether they're being venal or just diluted, I think they're really saying harm to the system that's working well for us.
Don't worry, if you actually knew the people I hang out with, you wouldn't trust any of them.
We'll go to our next question.
The one last thing I want to say on this is Doug, with the honor and honesty that's characteristic of him. One of the reasons his blog is so good and has such a huge subscription, including mine. If we do have, legalization, we are going to have more reasons drugs. Probably consumer products directly apply. One thing we know about drugs is the only realistic debate. It's not whether the harm, it's whether the harm is minor or whether it's real catastrophic. That is the realistic debate. Talk about increased usage. It's going to be one pole or the other or something in between, but there will be more harm actually if there is increased usage.
All right, there's a few questions down here.
So, I don't know if the DEA or the current system is likened under the military-industrial complex. I was one of those individuals who started out as taking the libertarian/progressive position on, the legalization of drugs. Then I spent 2 years of my life working with people who were addicted to drugs. They're not rational actors. They were doing absolutely terrible things. I witnessed as a 19 to 21-year-old, the worst things that I could possibly imagine. They crossed the socioeconomic status from rich, to poor. And then I would go back to people who, we would pontificate about what we think the system should be like. And I would explain, okay, this experience changed my perception. I now feel that, maybe marijuana is another issue entirely because I never really dealt with that. It was people on methamphetamines, heroin, these drugs that I can never, ever now come to the conclusion because of some sort of market-based theory that they should be legal. And I would come back to these individuals and say, listen, through my experiences, I have changed my mind. I no longer take this position. And they still say, well, we think it should be this way because of these experiences. I guess I'm more of a comment. I think it's easy for us to, be philosopher kings from our position, but people aren't rational actors when they're on these very dangerous, deadly drugs. Maybe marijuana is different, because every state and federally funded program these individuals went to did not work, in my experience. In fact, I've met doctors and psychologists, almost at the end they say, you might as well take these people behind the woodshed and shoot them. And that's a terrible thing to say, but that shows us how much the system is broken. And education, all these things don't work. So my point is, I hopefully we can differentiate marijuana and all these things, and I think you guys have made that point because you're not advocating a complete legalization, but there's a big difference there, and I guess that's the comment that I wanted to make. I didn't want students to go away and think, okay, well, now we want to legalize everything. There's a difference there because there's some real dangers in those hard drugs.
And in addition to agreeing completely with your point and encouraging everybody as they walk away, especially because I have to go teach class and you have to catch the plane in 30 seconds, absolutely bring nuance to the discussion, right? And that's one of the challenges because it will be in the rhetorical benefit of those trying to argue against marijuana legalization to lump it with other drugs. And it will be in the rhetorical benefit of those for marijuana legalization to try to distinguish other drugs, and you have to be attentive to those realities. The only follow-up point that I would say to you, especially in light of your own experiences, is even accepting fully the reality that whether marijuana is in the group or just other drugs turn people into irrational actors, then we can look to the reality of the criminal justice system that itself says when somebody is irrational, whether we say insanity or something else, we don't want the criminal justice system as the mechanism for dealing with it. And so whether it's having some kind of insanity approach to those kinds of actors, whether it's, as I think ultimately, developing some kind of technological means, right? Having people subject to another drug that either, deactivates these other harmful drugs or gives them a violent reaction so they, instantly puke the minute they put these other things in their system. It's still not clear to me that locking them in a cage and threatening them with a criminal justice system that itself has its credibility depend on the assumption that people can act rationally. Those realities don't, for me, answer the prohibition question as much as it just reinforces my sense that using the criminal justice system as the way to deal with these human harms is a recipe not necessarily for reducing the harms, but maybe for destroying the validity of the criminal justice system. And that's why my concern is driven not only by a belief that we're misspending our resources and our energies in the theoretical arguments you have in mind, but I don't want the criminal justice system to go away. My job depends on it. And so what I don't want to have happen, which is what I think is a risk in Bill's argument, is to turn the criminal justice system into just another aspect of our massive nanny-state government, because doing so actually undermines the legitimacy of it across the board. And there are some truly rational, evil, harmful people out there. Some of them are addicted to drugs, but that's not why I want them sitting in a jail cell. It's because of the other things they're prepared and willing to do while they're acting at least rationally enough for me to feel comfortable saying they ought to be subject to the criminal sanction, apart from those poor souls that it sounds like you tried to help out.
And the other thing I would add in 10 seconds is that you're exactly right. Addiction needs to be part of this discussion, much more than it is. And the second thing, in response to Doug's point, is that while one can certainly question both the efficacy and the humanity of treating people just with jail, the deterrent effect of jail for potential future violators of the drug laws is very significant. So we won't have people to worry about, or we're going to send them to jail, or we're going to send them. Thank you all.
Please join me